Okay, so let me introduce another core values. And this is similar in some ways with the core value of being proactive, but I think it's still slightly different. And it would still be good to cover this concept because it adds a little bit more color to the core value of just being proactive. So this is the concept of go extra miles, over deliver, over deliver. So there's one thing that I read somewhere and it left a very strong impression. And it basically says satisfaction is equal to expectation minus what's been delivered. So a satisfaction of a customer or satisfaction of a supervisor is equal to what they expected minus what you were able to deliver. With that hindsight, C players always deliver less than what was expected. So the customers and the supervisors are not satisfied because their expectations were high, what was delivered was low. Your supervisor has given you instructions to do A, B, and C. C players only do B or C or B and C. Supervisor has to follow up on what about A? Like, oh, sorry, I missed. And then there is that conversation back and forth. C players do that, okay? Over deliver means you deliver more than what they expected. B level players deliver exactly what was expected. Your supervisor or customer said do A, B, and C. You did exactly A, B, and C, and A, B, C only. That's what B players do. What do C players do? They think about the end game. They think about what is it that the supervisor is expecting from me? What's the end outcome that we desire to achieve? How can I add more value to what I'm doing? How can I over deliver? So how can I not only do A, B, and C, what are additional things that the supervisor would find value or the customers would find value? Or what are additional things that can really add meaning to the people that I'm serving? And what can I do to go extra miles for their behalf? Okay. Notice that C players are often driven by fear. Fear that they're going to get fired, fear that they're going to be scolded, fear that they're going to get performance warnings. A players are not driven by fear. They're driven by love. In a way, love for their customers, for their team, or for the people that they're serving. Very different motivator. Fear will get you a certain way. Fear is a very powerful motivator. It will get you to a certain extent where you may not get fired. But it can only get you up to so far. Right? Really being driven by love or charity or whatever you decide to call it for your customers, for the people that you're serving, for your team, for the supervisor who's going extra miles to protect you, to watch out for your interests, doing things for them will yield in results that fear-driven actions will not get you. Okay? Always think about how can I deliver more than what is expected. Sometimes that means you don't want supervisor or clients to have such a high expectation because if you promise a lot of things and deliver the same amount, maybe they're still dissatisfied. So you got to manage their expectations so that it's reasonable, but always strive to exceed and over deliver, right? If the supervisor is expecting, let's say 4% on some metric, your goal shouldn't be 4%. You hit 4%, you're B level. Your goal should be, how can I do more? How can I over deliver? My supervisor is expecting 4% on this metric. And I agree this metric is important. You should be thinking, what can I do to get it to 4.5%, 5%? Are there things that I can do to make that difference for my team? Right? It could be metric driven. It could be something else, right? Always try to over deliver. Now, with this, if you're super smart, you might be able to over deliver while spending the same amount of time as your coworkers. But let me tell you, most likely your coworkers are also extremely smart, just like you. And do you think they're just putting in 40 hours a week? No, definitely not. When I attended Caltech as a graduate school, that changed my life for a lot of different things. But one of the things that I was really, really impressed was some of my classmates were super, super, super smart. Some of the smartest kids I've ever met in my life. Yet, every weekend, they were studying diligently, Saturday and Sunday, spending hours and hours and hours reviewing materials, preparing, trying to level up. And I was so impressed with their work ethics that made me realize, wow, the scientific community is in good hands. Maybe I don't actually need to be an engineer or a scientist, because look at these amazing people who are smart, but they're working really, really hard. But anyway, that experience led me to see how a lot of very smart people in the world are also some of the hardest working people in the world. You cannot just be smart. Maybe that got you quite far in your college, but that only gets you up to, so far. If you belong to a great organization, you're working with some of the smartest people who are constantly thinking, how can I better serve my customers, better serve my team, and they're going extra miles. You got to. You cannot join a company and think you're just going to work 40 hours a week. That's exactly what you do to not get fired. But it will never yield in anything other than just that. That's like putting your career on pause. Okay? You can still be super effective putting in 50, 60 hours a week, sometimes a little bit more if that's needed, sometimes a little bit less if you're having some downtime. But do not ever join a company thinking you're just going to do bare minimum. Bare minimum, 40 hours a week, 45 hours a week. Okay, maybe that's what your supervisor is expecting, that you put in at least 45 hours a week or 50 hours a week. If that's the expectation, what do you do to over deliver? Do you do exactly 45 and say, hey, I've done exactly what you told me to do? Well, that's exactly what B-level players do. They do exactly everything that they were told to do. They don't get fired, but they don't get promoted very fast. They don't get recognized. They're mediocre. Great people are always thinking, they're thinking constantly, what can I do, again, to better serve my customers? It's driven by love. When you really deeply care about a company or about certain people, you're not like, you know what, I care about my parents, I'm just going to think about them for 1 hour a week. You don't. You're thinking about them constantly because you care about them. If you care deeply about your projects because your project has meaning, has purpose, your organization has purpose, right? And you believe in it, you're not going to say, hey, I'm just only going to believe in that cause for 40 hours a week, right? Go extra miles. And this is really important, especially if you need to be trained. If there are skill gaps, if there are things that you're missing to be effective in your job, don't take the company time to get leveled up. Don't spend that 40-hour week. That 40-hour week is for you to do productive work. It's not that 40 hours a week, half of that time devote on your, getting leveled up. There are companies expecting you to do at least 40, 45 hours of quality work, and any additional materials you need to observe to get leveled up, you gotta put that in your extra miles, in your extra time. Okay? Otherwise, you're not being fair to the company, you're not being fair to the people that you're serving. Okay? So if you're behind, if there is some learning gap, and of course, we may have learning gap. I may find that I have to learn some of these new technologies or, these new skill sets that I don't have, and I need to put in the extra time. But if you're just shunning work after 40 hours a week, you're going to disappoint everyone, including your team, your supervisor, and the company. If there are things that you need to fill in the missing gap, go the extra miles. If you're serving and getting paid by your client, do not charge them for this extra time that you're devoting to get educated. It's not fair for them to pay you while you're getting educated. They're paying for professionals. They're not paying trainees. Okay? Unless you're exclusively going for a training program, in which you should consider yourself extremely lucky that the company is willing to invest their time to have you level up because most of the companies wouldn't. It's a lot cheaper for them to hire someone with that existing skill sets than investing time to help you level up. So if you're working for a company that believes in education and training, you should consider yourself very, very lucky because not many companies are willing to spend that amount of resource to get you leveled up. So if you're fortunate to be in that situation, do everything you can. You should be spending 70, 90 hours a week to really level up as quickly as possible so you can jump back to your team and really start making contributions. Because while you're away in training, everyone else is carrying your load, right? So you want to take the time. Don't be complacent and only put in the very minimum. All right, so those are some of the principles about core values. Below, we'll present a few scenarios and I'll go through each one of them.